And so the last distortion that I'm going to discuss in this video is personalization. And I'm going to spend a decent amount of time here because ask any forum moderator or people who observe online discourse, perhaps more than any of the other things that I've discussed so far. What goes wrong in a conversation is when one party feels attacked and takes things too personally. So in the interest of showing rather than telling, I'm going to kick it old school just for a second. What is personalization? I would like to hear from Carly Simon.
You're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain. I'll bet you think this song is about you. Don't you? Don't you?
I bet you think the song's about you. This comment, this criticism, this thread comes from this underlying narcissism and vanity, a big conception of self that sees the self as needing to be involved with and respond to all these things in the environment. Those are strong words, narcissism and vanity and whatever it is. They're not meant to target a particular person. As a matter of fact, from my perspective as a psychotherapist, we all, every human being, deal with some level of that misappropriation, misperception of self. Many of us struggle with a sense of self that has kind of porous boundaries or bigger boundaries than is healthy. So we end up getting involved. We end up feeling attacked with these things that in reality don't have anything to do with us. That's my psychotherapy. That's my day job. I help people with that self boundary every single day. And so applying that, right? There's so much of this conversation has been about taking psychotherapy concepts and applying them to our board game discourse. And in particular, this whole reactionary culture idea that I'm talking about. So the way that plays out here is this idea, if a criticism comes down that a board game has difficult aspects of it, racism, sexism, or whatever, then I'm calling the player of the game, the liker of the game, a sexist or racist. Am I a racist because I didn't want them to cancel Prison Architect? Am I a sexist because I liked the original cover of Tiny Epic Dungeons? Am I a homophobe for not wanting the husband to marry the husband in Everdell? Fuck no. I'm a good person trying to play games. Leave me alone. There's one concept, one idea at the heart of quote-unquote SJW nonsense. It's this idea that we're calling people racist, sexist, all this stuff. The idea that we're using our powers of screaming and shame to ruin people's fun, make people feel bad, tear down the white male oppressor wherever they may be. You're so vain. It's not about you. I will speak directly to reactionary culture, resistor of change at this point. I don't care about your feelings. It's not about that. It's about my comfort, our comfort here on the margins. Folks who want to see that greater representation so that we feel more welcome in the hobby and we see ourselves in the games as much as y'all do. It's about that sense of ownership with which I opened the video. We want to share in that ownership, not to replace, but to share so that we all feel more welcome than we currently do. It's getting better, but we have a long way to go. And so, we're doing it by these attacks, quote unquote, on the games themselves. And there's this idea that, you attack something you love, then you're attacking the person who loves it. And to me, that is a kind of thing of personalization. We should be able to separate who we are from what we love, because when we can't do that, especially when it comes to things, at the end of the day, games are things, then we end up with this expanded view of self that's prone to attacks, and it's prone to these kind of distortions in thinking. So the biggest distortion of all is this idea that, we're all calling people racist. I call that a distortion, not to deny that it happens. I see it on, the internet all the time. I did my whole first video on kindness about, that we should check on our side the amount that we do that. Don't call people these things unless they truly deserve it. So on my channel, over the course of the year, I almost ran like a proof of concept. I've gone the entire year. I've done every single conversation without calling any single person these terrible things. Not once. Check the record. And yet, I will still have people who think that I'm attacking them, that I'm calling them these things. So I've done the thing. I've given the inch. I have promised, made a solemn vow to never call a person racist, sexist, homophobic, or any of these things. So inch given. I would like to offer this to reactionary culture resistor of change. If I'm going to stop doing it, then please stop perceiving it. All right, so we move on with our discussion of personalization. It is a giant, multifaceted turd, the gift that keeps on anti-giving. So I talked about personalization as this, leaving us open to attack because, we identify ourselves with this expanded self, feel the need to be involved, feel involved with our environment. Another aspect is when someone takes their own personal experience or the way things work in their world and expects that to translate to other people's worlds as well. In board game discourse, that often manifests as, I don't see a problem, therefore there's not a problem. So I'll share this quote in reference to harassment. There was a discussion on Facebook. This was this person's response. I've been in this hobby for 10 years. I've never met anyone but perfectly nice, welcoming people. Stop being racist and mentioning that they're white. So a self-identified white male from that particular discussion, talking about how they've never experienced harassment and therefore there is not a problem of harassment. And I don't remember the particulars of the conversation, but I can almost guarantee I was focusing on the white maleness of the harassers or gatekeepers or whoever, because that lands disproportionately on us trying to get into the hobby. And this person is saying, well, that's not a problem because I've never experienced a problem. I wish that were true. We move on. Let's talk about the actual game criticism itself and how it plays out there. I asked 3 of my Puerto Rican friends if they cared about the colonization in Puerto Rico. They don't. So I don't know why you're complaining. Or even better, I am, insert marginalized category. I don't see a problem with this game. You're putting it in there. So I have 2 thoughts about that in response. First of all, especially when it comes to the white guy asking the minorities in their own life experience for validation of their own ideas, which in this space is often getting that confirmation that their game is fine. Leave it alone. And on some level, I know what they're responding to. And I've done this, I admit this. So I'll go into a forum and I'll say something like, just kind of in a short way, I'm Puerto Rican and I see a problem with Puerto Rico. So then that person will ask their own friends, their own Puerto Rican friends, and they'll get their confirmation. So that lets them say, you're not speaking for all Puerto Ricans, you're wrong. I'm not pretending to speak from all Puerto Ricans. Let me let you in on what's happening. So I'm making an argument from my life experience that I see something. That's number one. Life experience is not the same. It's not universal. I'm not saying that all Puerto Ricans should think this way. What I'm saying is that it makes sense for me to see this way. And what I'm also saying is that there's enough of us who agree. It's not like we're just making it up. There's been a lot of thought on this, and enough of us say it. Not everybody. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to this cultural stuff, a lot of the cleavage is not really, the most important thing to think about is not identity. It's where do you fall on the spectrum of it's just a game versus this is a cultural product with cultural values. That's really the determining factor in terms of thinking of where we'll land on this stuff. Well, then if you think it's just a game, then it's fine. And as a matter of fact, I've met plenty of Puerto Ricans. That goes to that second quote I read, where they'll say, "You're Puerto Rican, you're ruining our fun. Don't take away the one game that we have, Jason. Shut your mouth so I can move my brown chits around." And a game that's called Puerto Rico. So that's honestly, I've gotten the biggest pushback there in that particular case, because we're thinking differently. They think it's just a game, chits and cardboard, whatever, and I'm seeing the cultural value. With me, I'm adding my life experience as a Puerto Rican to this basic idea that is beyond identity. And that's a really subtle thing to work out, but when we're in this kind of arguing space, subtlety goes out the window and everything becomes overgeneralized and all this kind of stuff. That is a problem. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in the realm of life experience. Once again, when I say that I see a problem with whatever game it is, what I'm saying is that I'm speaking from my life experience. And I've tried to get better. Once again, said this in the previous video on kindness. Tried to get better about not generalizing my own life experience. Not everybody's going to see what I see. So then I would like to ask for the same. Don't put your life experiences. Don't do the "I don't see a problem, therefore there's not a problem" thing to me. Great that you don't see a problem. I do. Now that we've established where we're at, let's really talk. That's what I want.